So transitioning to the U.S. Open, and first of all, let me just say, I was as I'd mentioned before, I took my brief absence. I was in New York for several rounds of the U.S. Open. I'd never been to a Grand Slam before or the U.S. Open, and it was absolutely an incredible experience. I would highly encourage tennis fans and really just sports fans in general to attend at some point in their career. This was one of the best sporting events that I'd ever been to because it's truly like entering a theme park. It's truly like you show up and you're walking into a zoo. You have all these courts that don't require major security or they're not in big stadiums, and you can literally sit right courtside next to the athletes playing, and you get to see them up close and personal. And it's absolutely sensational to see the footwork, to see how hard they hit, the consistency, the technique for someone that has been playing tennis and has been following tennis my entire life. An absolutely surreal experience that I would recommend. But now, when it comes to the U.S. Open men's final, and mind you, I got a chance to see all these guys. I saw Djokovic. I saw Medvedev. I saw Berrettini. I saw Tsitsipas. I saw Zverev. I saw, Berrettini, Schwartzman. You name it, Osaka, Ash Barty, all these fantastic players I saw. And I'm going to touch on this in a moment, but Daniil Medvedev, by far, was the best player that I saw at this particular tournament at the U.S. Open. And so yesterday, he upset Novak Djokovic in straight sets to capture his first career Grand Slam title, 6-4, 6-4, 6-4. Obviously denied Djokovic of making history for the moment. Obviously, he prevented him from winning an entire Grand Slam, winning all 4 Grand Slam tournaments in the same calendar year. It's only been done by, the last time we saw it was Rod Laver did it twice, 1962 and 1969. For on the women's side, Steffi Graf was the only one to accomplish it. In 1988 was the most recent example. But he also prevented Novak Djokovic from capturing his 21st Grand Slam, which would surpass Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal. And the thing about Novak Djokovic is, again, the sustained success, right? This is a guy who won the U.S. Open 3 times before, 2011, 2015, 2018, and now he's been the runner-up at the U.S. Open 6 times, along with the 20 Grand Slams he already has. And he was having, obviously, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, individual season in a calendar year ever. He was 27-0 in majors entering this final. His first loss came in a major final right now, again, the U.S. Open. And the thing that stood out to me, and this is one thing that I never seen from Novak Djokovic, at least not in the last decade, since he's really ascended at about 27 years old, 26, 27, this was the first time, and it was noticeable how gassed and absolutely exasperated Novak Djokovic looked in the third set, which is something that you rarely see from Novak Djokovic, who has always had the best endurance, has always appeared like he had the best physical ability to find ways to gruel out ways to win tennis matches. And yet, watching him in the third set, he looked like he was absolutely laboring. He was absolutely exhausted. He was taxed. And when I think about the type of run, and when I hope that tennis fans understand how absolutely exhaustive it is to win a Grand Slam, let alone to win 20. To win a Grand Slam, you're playing a match every other day. Every other day for about 2 weeks straight. It's absolutely taxing. It's extremely demanding on your body. And the physical toll, let alone the emotional toll, the physical toll is tremendous. And then you add on top of that the emotional toll of having this history hanging over him, having to enter in this tournament, and how every single time he advances around that pressure that's exerted onto him only exacerbates and is only compounded with every additional round he makes it in the US Open. And so I understand why at the end he kind of admitted that he was relieved that his bid to try and win a complete Grand Slam and to break history was over for the time being, because the toll that it does take on you emotionally and physically is extraordinary. And his first break point, the first break point chance he had, came when he was already down 2-0 and down 5-2. That was the first time in the final that Novak Djokovic had a break point opportunity. And it seemed like he might have been able to string together a couple games. He was building some momentum, and you could see him on the changeover down 5-4 in the third set, almost forced to kind of smile in his appreciation of the crowd kind of serenading him with chants, absolutely adoring him. And that's why when he put the towel over his face, he was extremely emotional. He was tearing up. He was crying, because I think it was one of the first times in his career where two things happened. One, the magnitude of the moment of just taking the first second he had to really, I think, reflect on the history that he was embarking on, I think hit him directly in that moment. And then it was also one of the first moments where he felt truly beloved by the crowd. It was one of the first moments in his career when I think he truly felt the appreciation and the praise and the adulation from the fans for what he's accomplished over his career. And I don't think that was always something that he felt throughout the majority of the matches that he was playing. In fact, the first couple matches that I saw him play at the US Open, every single time his opponent won a game or won a point, the crowd was cheering and praising profusely whoever the opponent was that he was facing, because I think that we didn't really see so much of this human side of Novak Djokovic. And again, as a tennis fan, I understand the history that he was embarking on, that the quest that he was on. And I appreciate Novak Djokovic for his greatness and for what he's meant for the sport. But I don't think he probably felt the same amount of love and affection that he likely felt he deserved. And that was the first moment when I think all of these emotions were crashing and kind of conflating at the same exact and coalescing at the same exact moment. And it hit him. And it showed a human side, and a side that I think more people would like to see from him. And his opponent, Daniil Medvedev, listen, I said this, entering the tournament, he was the one legitimate challenger to me that I thought would pose the biggest obstacle to Novak Djokovic. Because I thought that Daniil Medvedev, he was the best tennis player that I saw at the US Open. Yes, that includes Novak Djokovic, who I saw. I'm not making any claims that he's better than Novak Djokovic, but at the US Open, Daniil Medvedev was absolutely dominant in a way that you rarely see. He dropped one set the entire tournament. He was absolutely sensational on his ground strokes. Everything looked effortless. He was getting to every ball, and he beat Djokovic down at the game that has defined Djokovic, at his own game. Grinding you out, not missing, not making mistakes. Obviously, he showed a little human side when he double faulted on 2 match point opportunities, Medvedev. But excluding that, he was pretty much flawless. Rarely made mistakes. He was getting to every shot. He was moving Djokovic around the court. His strokes are impeccable. The guy does not miss, and yet he's 6'6", so he's extremely lanky, but he's got incredible reach, and he stands normally 5 to 6 feet back behind the baseline. Watching him play, it almost looked at times like he was gliding from side to side because he just wasn't missing shots, and he'd play against some players that were hitting heavier balls that seemed to be more laboring for them to have to kind of power the ball over the net. And with him, his technique, just getting it back with tremendous pace and depth on the balls. And so I was happy for him. It was well deserved. He had been knocking on the door of a Grand Slam title for years. He lost to Novak Djokovic at the Australian Open final just this past year. He finished as the runner-up to Rafael Nadal in the 2019 U.S. Open title. So this is a guy that has certainly paid his dues. And so I was happy for him from that perspective. And to be honest, I was happy for the sport of tennis that they saw someone else be able to display a level of dominance that we had rarely seen from a non-member of the Big Three. In fact, Daniil Medvedev is the first player of this generation to beat a member of the Big Three in a Grand Slam final. That's incredible. Absolutely incredible when you listen to that, when you hear that. And I think that both players showed tremendous class. I actually loved, by the way, the dead fish celebration, paying homage to one of the FIFA celebrations for Daniil Medvedev after he won. But to show the appreciation that he had for Djokovic, I thought that both players were extremely gracious, extremely classy, had very kind words to say for one another. Medvedev even went as far as to say that he regards Djokovic as the greatest tennis player of all time. He made that publicly. And so I just loved the demeanor and the disposition of both of these guys, both in triumph for Medvedev and both in defeat for Djokovic. And it was an incredible story to follow. I feel privileged to have been able to see both these guys play and to be at that venue at Arthur Ashe Stadium, along with some of the other stadiums. It was absolutely sensational. And it was just very efficient, too. He was effective and efficient, beat him in 2 hours and 15 minutes, which for a professional tennis match at a Grand Slam and a five-setter is kind of making quick work. To beat Djokovic in 2 hours and 16 minutes is very efficient. It is very efficient. So I do think that this is great for the game, and happy for Daniil Medvedev that he wins his first Grand Slam title. It's been a long time coming.